right. Hello, and welcome to Slava Heroyam podcast. Preview to all heroes. I'm here today with Brendan Kelley. He's joining us from where are you from, Brendan? I should have asked that beforehand.
Yeah, I'm the Eastern.
Okay, U.S. And I've discovered Brendan's research efforts on Kherson and really the entire Ukrainian front earlier this May. He runs one of the most extensive interactive maps that I've seen. We're going to get into that a little bit, but he has a much better grasp of tactical knowledge of the front than I have, even though my area is usually the air warfare. We're going to get a little bit more into the ground warfare today, and just want to thank you for being here, Brendan. He works hours and hours on this project, trying to keep updated on civilian casualties as well as the military maneuvering. I'm going to kind of bring up the map system we're talking about. Let's see, where'd it go? There we go. So right there next to us, when you open this page, it is the map.ukrdailyupdate.com. Brendan, tell us how you got started on this project.
Yeah, so I joined this project 2 years ago as a volunteer. All my work is volunteer. And it is run by Andrew Perpetua. He's the director. He's the owner. He's the main guy. Now the project grew in like 2024 to the point where he needed more people. So we have a whole team of geolocators and OSINT analysts that are constantly like hundreds and hundreds of drone videos per day. We're doing like 250 to 350 videos per day, breaking them all down by frame, and then what we can geolocate, we geolocate and put onto the map. Now, I don't do any of the geolocations. That's not my foray. My foray is the news. So I pay attention every single day to the reports from emergency services. I read the daily police report. I read Oblast, Rayon, and even some municipal level reports to get an idea of what's going on in detail on the civilian side of things. So I don't really focus too much on geolocated combat footage. I focus more on civilian casualties.
And unfortunately, there are a lot of civilian casualties, and we talk about that terror campaign, in particular Kherson, every week on this channel. You become, I don't want to say you become really familiar with what's going on in the Kherson region, as much as anyone can without actually being there all the time. And tell us, and you write a column on it, in fact, called the Kherson Weekly.
Yeah.
And this recently came out. I think you said there are 150 casualties in Kherson this week alone.
120 between the 29th and the 5th.
Wow. And it just is ongoing. Is in kind of, some of my audience has seen documentaries on the subject, but I don't know if they're really aware how much this has increased. How much is 120 casualties compared to this time last year or so?
So weeks where we were surpassing 100 casualties were extremely rare, up until about, I would say, March, April, when we saw Russians deploy unmanned systems brigade to this area. And then casualties went up drastically, and the reported number of Russian drone usage went up drastically around that same time. So 100 casualties per week is a lot, even by Kherson standards. And now we're seeing that much more frequently. We almost never saw that this time last year. You'd be talking more about like 50 to 70, 75.
And why do you think they've increased their efforts? Is this a sign of to me that in my simple mind, that's a sign that they know they're losing and they're trying to increase their efforts to break the civilian population? But what else it might be going on that they've decided? Is it just that they got better technology to kill people with, or
column A, column B? So I think the best explanation is its scale. The reason why more people are being hit is because Russians have access to more drones now. And in particular, they have access to more fiber optic drones than they did before. if we're talking about 2024, 2025, like early 2025, most of what we were seeing in terms of drones being used was VT-40 FPVs or Mavic 3 drones. Those are pretty simple quadcopter systems. But as we've seen the Safari ramp up, we're starting to see more and more of like the Vandal fiber optic drones being used, or now Molnia fixed wing FPV drones are really popular. So having more platforms with which they can carry this out has also contributed to it. I would say scale is the number one difference. It's just the amount of Russian drone teams deployed in the area has allowed them to carry this out more, because Ukrainian counter drone operations have progressively gotten better, even while the Russians are scaling things up, but not enough to compensate for all of the civilian harm that inevitably comes from these targeted attacks.
Originally, it was a human safari of terror. Keep the populace afraid, keep them indoors, which, funny enough, the ones that have stayed, a lot of times you still see their spirits high, their spirits defiant. The only thing that gets them down somewhat is the thought that the outside world isn't learning about their situation, which is why we're here. But they've gone beyond terror to a real siege, a drone siege, where they're trying to burn fields with the drones, or even taking entire sub-communities hostage, like Oleshki. When did the Oleshki situation start? I became aware of it about March.
With Oleshki, I don't really think Oleshki is unique. Occupation is occupation, and it's been this way since it's been occupied. We know that Oleshki is bombed by the Ukrainian Air Force every single day. There's artillery strikes in Oleshki from the Ukrainian artillery every single day. There's Ukrainian drone strikes with FP1, FP2. So they're using large UAVs too against buildings in Oleshki. And also, Ukraine has basically coated Oleshki with FPVs to prevent Russian airborne units from advancing, because Oleshki is really strategically important because it's close to the old Antonivsky Bridge. And that serves as a way for the Russians to project power out into the islands that are right in front of Oleshki, which then allow them to get even closer to Kherson city. So, and the Russians are still operating armored fighting vehicles in Oleshki. So we saw 2 weeks ago a BMD-4 of the 98th VDV destroyed in Oleshki. So this, I really don't know about this narrative of it being under siege. It's under occupation. If anything, the drone siege is coming from the other way, because the Russians aren't focused on sieging down territory that they already occupy. The Russians are trying to siege Kherson city itself. So I don't subscribe to the narrative of a siege in occupied territory, because those definitions they don't.
And I'm blending my question together. Kherson is under siege. Oleshki, I'm under the impression that it's occupied, but that maybe because it's so strategically important that some civilians are being used as human shields, in other words.
Yeah, I have no evidence of that. Based on what we see in the open source, Russian forces are in those cities and towns. They're occupying them. They're using them as operating bases. There are instances that have been recorded of Russians carrying out drone strikes on people in occupied territory. There are a handful of those. I also have geolocated drone strikes from Ukrainian drones that killed civilians too. So the narrative of Russian drones exterminating people in occupied territory, I think, is potentially overblown. Also, the narrative about mines being placed behind Oleshki is not correct. There's no visual evidence to support that at all. And it doesn't line up with Russian mining doctrine. The Russians, if they're mining anything, the Russians are using drones to drop mines inside Kherson city on vital intersections to stop free movement throughout the city. Now, what we've also seen for the last year and a half is a campaign by the Ukrainian drones to drop mines on all of those roads behind Oleshki as well. And I don't think civilians know the difference between a Ukrainian PFM-1 and a Russian PFM-1 mine. So I hate to say it, but the media narrative and what I've seen, they don't align. So I know that for some people, that might be controversial, me saying that. Some people might not like me saying that, but I'm saying there's no evidence to support it, and I'm pretty adamant on that.
Right, and I think that it's important to in this time when the main thing you're concerned about is a deliberate human safari and attacking of civilians, you want to demonstrate when you have evidence that you've seen and when you don't, because there's gonna be people that are coming into the situation of there's two sides to every story. Well, with Russia versus Ukraine, there are two sides to it, but it's less complicated than it's made out to be, and at least in my mind. Um,
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely.
so
Yeah, the moral calculus is clear cut here in this
mhm,
case. But specifically, the claims in the media of civilians being used as human shields is debatable, because also at the same time, a good portion of the civilians still left in occupied Kherson are waiters, so-called waiters,
right,
people that specifically do want Russian occupation. Um, Now, I'm not saying that's a majority of them, but I'm saying that is a portion of them. We've also seen many people leave the left bank over the course of the last year and a half. So the people staying there could either potentially be waiting for some cross river operation from the Ukrainians that at this rate will never happen. Like there's no realistic potential of a crossing of the Dnipro in either direction.
hmm,
The military forces do not exist to do it on the Ukrainian side. They simply don't
mhm,
have the manpower, and they cannot afford the losses in personnel and equipment in a mass river crossing. And the Russians can't mass the forces to do it themselves because of the drone threat. Because we have a transparent battlefield, ISR is going to pick up people in assembly areas before. Like we're
right.
seeing Russian IFVs being destroyed 90 kilometers away from the riverbank, deep in
What what it
territory.
what it sounds like to me, uh, at bird's eye view level here, having never been to this area, and I'm going to ask about a little bit more about the strategic importance of this area and Ukraine's middle strike campaign, or in a second here,
Mhm.
and that'll get into it. But what it sounds like to me is that Oleshki may not be unique, but it is a little bit more strategically important, which would make it harder for people that do want to leave to escape.
Yeah.
Um,
Um, yes, I
because
could agree with that.
both sides have embattled the area, and you have stories of people in Oleshki. They just want to get their people to the next occupied town for medical treatment, and they can't do it. But there's a lot of reasons they can't do it.
Yeah, because of the logistical
So
lockdown, because
yeah,
Ukrainian drones are doing a logistical siege, preventing supplies from coming in. And that's been the case the logistical situation on the left bank in Kherson
mhm,
has been bad for a year now. And it's
right,
because Ukraine's middle strike, and specifically early on, it was because of their heavy bomber drones. Their heavy bomber
hmm,
drones were able to place mines on all these roads leading into Oleshki, Holopristan, Kozachi
hmm,
Lahari, those kinds of places. And it
right,
really disrupted Russian logistics.
and
Also, at the same
that's
time,
important too because that keeps artillery back here at
no,
least, and it doesn't.
no,
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 okay.
we've had geolocated, destroyed guns from last month.
Hmm.
34th Marine Brigade destroyed Russian guns literally in the woods just south of Aleshki.
Oh, okay. That's
Yeah, yeah, and they're destroying BMD-4 infantry fighting vehicles inside the city itself.
Does the 30th have HIMARS to deal with Russian artillery?
I believe a HIMARS unit was moved to this area of operations, but the brigades that are operating in Kherson on the Ukrainian side do not typically have HIMARS attached to them. No. Your Marine brigades are kind of outfitted like your typical mechanized maneuver brigade. They have Grad, MLRS. They've got Bodana howitzers.
Okay. Yeah, no, I'm thinking a little bit tactically because this situation has been static, and what I'm going to ask is, can you describe to people what the Ukrainian uh, middle uh, middle strike campaign versus a deep strike campaign, and most of this is drones, and I want to talk a little bit about the E97 highway to Crimea in that regard, and just give us a sense of the strategic importance of Kherson and why all this terror for a town that was 400,000 but now is only 60,000.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a couple ways of looking at it. I would say the strategic value of Kherson is no longer important
Mm-hmm.
because Kherson strategically, it's a gateway to the rest of the south.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically thinking about that Russian goal of connecting to Odessa, right? Early on in
Right.
2022. We saw Kherson was used as a way for Russian forces to get across the Dnipro River and then push on to Mykolaiv, and then they got beat in Mykolaiv and pushed all the way back. That situation now, it makes pretty much Kherson strategically almost irrelevant because neither side is going to be able to cross. But it is symbolically relevant. That's really the importance of Kherson, is it's symbolic. Now, for the Russians, because they see it as a Russian city, they want this as sort of another jewel in the crown, so to speak, with this revanchist imperialism that they have, sort of poisoning sort of the Russian psyche, the way of thinking, right? The geopolitical outlook of the Russians. And to them, symbolism is really important. If we think about like the capture of Crimea in 2014, like Crimea for the Russians, the sort of like you have the Z patriots, right? Who are hyper imperialists. But then you also have this depoliticized group that they don't really see politics and how it influences their lives at all. But they see like big things happen and then they say, oh, well, it must be good.
It must be Putin must have a reason.
Exactly. Zero agency, very little thought in terms of that. But a city like Kherson, right, it's symbolically important. It can be sold to the depoliticized group to kind of keep them on board. And then the Z Patriots, that's a fantasy for them. They would love that. So,
and the Russians think even if every civilian in Kherson ran off and they just got an empty city, then it's still symbolic.
Yes. Okay. Yes. And that's really the thing. If you look back at the Human Rights Watch report or the UN report from May 2025, both of them were released like within a week of each other. The goal of the human safari is depopulation. It's not wholesale murder, because if you were to look at it from that perspective, statistically, not a whole lot of people have actually died compared to other genocidal campaigns in other cities and other wars and other conflicts. Right.
Right.
Like, I've been able to verify 753 deaths.
Yeah.
Total since January 1st of 2024. That's still
which is horrible, and it's bragged about on Telegram, and I want to ask you about Telegram in a minute. But it's not razed to the ground completely with artillery yet, which it seems like they could have done if they wanted to.
Yeah, they absolutely could have.
And the damage is pretty. It's no longer the city that it was, for sure. It's been shelled enough. And that's when I ask about HIMARS, I'm asking what help has the U.S. already given that we could do repeat for the Kherson area that might actually help. I want to do things something that I don't think I will convince a lot of diplomats or politicians that they can do, which is do a no-fly corridor, not a no-fly zone. Corridors are thin strips of no-fly zone that you do for humanitarian reasons, and that's why you can say you're doing this air defense for humanitarian reasons, and it changes the face of the war for a lot of reasons. I don't want to get it too far into that tangent here, but what are some things that would driving their artillery back? Do they just need to let Ukraine cook and keep outrunning the Russians on the drone front? What kind of things can actually kind of start thwarting this, getting the numbers back down, do you think?
Well, to tie it back to the middle strike campaign, right? Middle strike or strikes on anything from like 50 to 200 kilometers behind the front line. You could, some people will say 25 to 200 kilometers. If those strikes keep it up, and we are seeing a week over week reduction by about like 300 drone attacks this past week, feasibly you could put an impact on Russian supply lines that drive drone attack volumes downward and thereby save civilian lives. In terms of driving the artillery back, I think the best thing that you can do is drive the ISR assets back. That's the key, is because the artillery by itself isn't really anything special without the ISR assets that the Russians have, right? Without being able to take out the reconnaissance drones.
Right.
That's the big thing, is you need to blind them first. You need to put out their eyes, and then you can start to pick apart other parts of their assets much, much easier. Much, much easier. The biggest thing is aviation.
Right.
Ukraine Ukraine needs aviation because the best way to go after drone pilots, not just their supply lines, but the best way to go after the drone pilots directly is with a French hammer. That has been the meta of the Ukrainian Air Force so far. So like when I was saying that they bomb Oleshki quite a bit, it's because that's where the Russian drone pilots are holed up deep in basements of abandoned homes.
A French hammer is a bunker busting bomb or a okay.
Yeah. I don't know if it's bunker busting, but ASSM 250 I think is what it's called. Don't quote me on the name of the bomb specifically.
Okay.
But it is the French hammer that is used quite a bit. MiG-29s dropping French hammers. They're really effective. Okay. So we see drone teams being taken out that way. So that can have a direct effect. But you're also dealing with such a scale of drone teams that Ukraine doesn't have the air force and the ability to carry out the number of sorties needed to really make that number trend downward.
Which brings us back to no-fly corridor. And the reason that I like a no-fly corridor is not just for extra airplanes from NATO, but because of the electronic package that those planes bring. And I'm just trying. I have explained a corridor to my audience before, but what I don't explain too often is how one of Russia's edges is still in electronic warfare. And the aircraft that they're bringing in that they're hoping will leaven the playing field, even with F-16s and Mirages on their side, they're still outdone by electronic warfare. The Gripen that they're going to be standing up in 2027 will be able to match the Russians in the electronic warfare arena. So we're both kind of talking about the same thing there. So I'm glad. But I want to take a second now to talk about. I have a section of I stop and do a section of the program each time that I recognize some folks that have fallen prey to Russian terror attacks. Most of these that we're about to see were attacked in Kyiv, and I want to talk a little bit about Ukraine running out of Patriots. And up until this point, they've been shooting down 95% or so of all the large-scale ballistic missile and Shahed drone attacks. They can't, the FPV war that we've been talking about is much more difficult. But they've done a really good job of being able to shoot down these long-range attacks. But they're going to start to struggle on that a little bit without help. And some of the casualties that have happened because of that include this young woman and her uncle. Let me remove this. And this time we have someone who tracks all this. So we'll show you kind of the research that Brendan does. This is Anna and her uncle they were trying to take shelter, as I understand, in a concrete building near Kyiv, and then they got trapped inside. Are you familiar with this story?
Yeah, I believe there was also another family that was killed in a shelter as well because of a collapsed structure. It's due to ballistic missiles.
Right.
This was either in Podilsky or Darnitsky district in Kyiv. I'm not sure as to which one, but it was one of the two. There were like 3 major building collapses that night.
Yeah, awful. And this one made why is this still? Oh, okay, there we go. This is not working out like I wanted it to. This is why I record these things instead of play them live. I'm fumbling around with this. There we go. Okay. So we have a student, Nani, from Nigeria, and her friend, and they had just graduated medical school. And I have a daughter that just graduated medical school at UT. And, I think a lot of people think of Ukraine and they sort of think of it like a war zone, like Afghanistan or Gaza. Gaza is a special situation itself, but my channel is not about that. But go ahead.
I didn't say anything. It's other people in my house.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
And no problem. I have those too. But these are specifically targeted people that they could be your next door neighbor, except for a language, and they have the same level of lives, the same level of technology. They have cell phones. They go to the movies, all this stuff, but their cities are under attack every night. And so, what can you tell me about these foreign exchange students? Really, I don't know if they're foreign exchange. They chose to come to medical school, maybe to help out with the medical situation in Ukraine.
Yeah. So I know Fatima Husinova. I believe her family were immigrants to Ukraine, if I'm not mistaken, because she has a Slavic patronymic last name there, or not patronymic, just a last name. But she was killed initially. She was initially the sole fatality of the strike.
Right.
There was a glide bomb dropped on a street. She and Nani were walking together. I believe there were upwards of 20 other people who were wounded in these glide bomb strikes across Kharkiv that day. And Nani unfortunately passed away, I think.
She was brought to Germany
later.
Yeah. I read she was brought to Germany. I haven't talked a lot about glide bombs on this channel because of the drones and ballistic missiles, but a glide bomb, hard to detect on radar, hard to see if you're a pilot or even an anti-aircraft station. But are they able to kind of target with them accurately, or are they just release them from a blackjack bomber and away they go?
Well, it depends. And it depends on it specifically what kind of glide bomb, because there's a lot of different kits. There's a lot of different ways that you can outfit ordnance with these glide kits, these wings that you can attach to the bombs. There's 250 kilogram, 500 kilogram, 1500 kilogram ones, and then also there's these other newer glide kits that allow the strikes to come from over 100 kilometers away. So you can see, like, stopping the glide bomb campaign has always been something that Ukraine's tried to do and struggled with. Like, there was a lot of talk in late 2024 because Zaporizhia was being bombed a lot of like, how can we shoot down the cabs? That's how they're referred to in Ukraine, as a KAB. And there wasn't really an effective solution to it. And then Russia started leaning more on its drones. But now what we've seen recently is actually the nightly drone attack totals from Russia have declined. And what's gone up is actually glide bomb attacks. In the last month, we've seen a lot more glide bombs than we've seen in the previous 6 months, I would say. So there's always these.
Just as an air-to-air guy, I was a AWACS guy, air battle manager. My audience knows that. I'm trying. Can you see my plane? I don't know if you can see my plane.
Yeah, absolutely.
But a glide bomb would seem like to me to be the hardest to detect, even more than a drone. And the reason being because it's erratic, it falls quickly in altitude. And I'm a guy looking at a radar. It'll often look like a bird, where even a Shahed drone has a radar signature that would be consistent. And so, yeah, I can imagine that's why they've gone to that, because now the Ukraine has to come up with a way to shoot those down before they can hit their target, and that's going to be very difficult.
Yeah, and the accuracy of these glide bombs is also mixed. Depends on what kind of glide kit you have on it. I mean, to bring things back to Kherson a little bit, the Russians have been trying to bomb the bridge between the island off of Kherson, Korabel Island, and the Russians have put 2 or 3 bombs through the pavement, through the deck of the bridge, but they've not managed to disable it, and oftentimes they bomb the water. So but there is an element of sort of like
can they be launched ballistically, or do they have to have an aircraft usually?
It's an aircraft. It's an aircraft that I forget the name of the actual technique, where you pitch up sort of vertically, almost
pop up. So it can be on a number of different aircraft.
Very common. It's Su-34. It's very common to be Su-34 these days.
And maybe I'll have you on again, but I think the no-fly corridor can be along the northern border and then another one kind of up and down the Dnipro River, and then one on the borders between Estonia and, because Russia has breached that airspace several times.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that since you can't really stop the glide bomb, you've got to stop the aircraft that is launching it.
Yes.
So more glide bomb casualties. These were also in the July 6th attack. This is not the same location. There are several bombs hit the city, different locations, correct? This is Katerina and Ina. They're also, these two are a little bit older, 28 years old instead of 23, but I think we lost sound.
No.
Oh, okay. Okay, good. Irina Grabko. this attack on Kyiv happened to hit a lot, take out, destroy lives of people that definitely aren't warriors. A lot of times I have there's rescue workers that the Russians target. They hit a site and then target the rescue workers as they come in. This isn't that this time. And then the fifth one this week, actually, the Zaporizhia front, Karina and her mother. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, do you know much about Karina? I think
this could have either been a drone attack or a glide bomb. They've been using actually an increasing number of FPVs in Zaporizhia recently.
Yeah, and I want to say it is a human safari type attack. They've been going. Have they increased the amount of attacks inside houses, or just going ahead and flying their drones inside people's houses instead of waiting for them to come out?
In what context? Like what location?
In Kherson, it's what we would know the most about. But
yeah, so in Kherson, there are some instances where like a drone will see movement through a window and then it'll attack. So like a lot of the time, a lot of the aftermath footage that you'll see or photos that you'll see, there's a black sort of explosion mark on the outside of the building, like right near a window, and the window and the brick around it are kind of pushed in or blown away from the edifice of the building. In Zaporizhia specifically, what we've seen geolocated evidence of, and the Russian drone groups that have released footage of their strikes on civilians in Zaporizhia, they're using drones to strike at key choke points throughout the city. So they're picking intersections where people either have to go through a rotary or they have to wait at a traffic light. And then they strike public buses is one thing that we've seen quite a bit. Mini buses, public buses being struck in sort of southern Zaporizhia, but even on the other side of the river in western Zaporizhia on the other side.
Oh, okay. The small correction, this 15-year-old, she's 15 years old, and it was shelling, an artillery strike this time, which also happens a lot. The unusualness of the human safari is what we try to stop, but it's also why I talk about artillery, because
that's interesting. Artillery should not be able to reach Zaporizhia city, and there hasn't been any reported artillery shelling in Zaporizhia city.
What about Orikhiv?
Orikhiv, yeah, Orikhiv.
Orikhiv.
Yeah. That's right on the front line.
So Zaporizhia Oblast, but Orikhiv is the town she's from.
Okay, that totally tracks then. Yes, that place gets absolutely shelled, and there's thousands of drones in the sky.
Oof.
Yeah.
So let's talk about one. We're going to wrap up here with an organization that you have connections to, but I always do the last segment of every episode of this podcast with learning about legitimate charities that can help this situation, especially the ones that give humanitarian aid. And I just did something to our feed. Okay, there we go. You're still with me. Good. Let me trying to this. I don't know if the other person that uses StreamYard has had this, but this thing is not very, what's it? I don't know if user friendly is the word, or it's not very intuitive is the word I'm looking for. You gotta go, you gotta hit the tiniest buttons to get things to come back and go away. I want to add this charity website to Kherson Help, and I want to talk about them a little bit and what they do. And I've run into charities before that were for Ukraine that were not legitimate, so it helps to have people that actually know the people in the charity. And this one is specifically to help out against the human safari. Can we talk a little bit about Kherson Help and what they do?
Yeah, Kherson Help, they're a German charity, actually. People who used to live in Kherson became refugees and then moved to Germany, and then they've set up base here to sort of start this local initiative to supply all different kinds of things. But one of their main initiatives is called the Anti-Human Safari, and their Anti-Human Safari initiative, it's run entirely off of donations, and they work hand in hand with other volunteer groups that are already in Kherson. So a lot of the volunteer groups in Kherson are performing civilian evacuations, or they're functioning as social taxis to move the elderly and less mobile civilians that need to get to like medical appointments or need to go grocery shopping for themselves, because like, again, the human safari creates these conditions where movement throughout the city is extremely difficult and for many people impossible. So what they do is they work with organizations like Spravjny or Silny Bovilny and other organizations that are on the ground providing those services. And what they do is they specifically provide them with drone detectors and body armor. So the anti-human safari thing is really to protect the volunteers. Liska Crofts is sort of the pioneer of the anti-human safari initiative, and she reached out to me, and we've been in contact for several months now. And in every single one of my my Kherson Weekly posts, I try and put in a reference for them, because the work that they're doing, it saves volunteers' lives. Volunteers are oftentimes a target of Russian FPV attacks. Specifically, they've come under a lot of attack from fiber optic drones recently, which is hard to figure out how to defeat those and how to get around it. But in terms of other drones, they can use the drone detectors to intercept the different frequencies that the Russian drones are operating on, and then you get a little screen that it'll give you like a sound alert, but then you'll also be able to watch the Russian drone from what it sees. So it intercepts the video card signal, so you can see a Russian drone approaching your car from behind you, and then get out of your car, run away, get to safety. You might lose your car, but you won't lose your life. And that's really the benefit of this is Liska helps provide them with body armor first, and then drone detectors after that. And it's roughly like 175 euro for a drone detector. But the thing is they have to keep being updated, because the Russians will change what frequencies they use. And so you need to be able to keep up with it. And so it creates this cat and mouse game, and it's pretty resource intensive. So they're doing some excellent work to keep the humanitarian workers in the fight, so to speak. Keep them.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And I saw a video recently that you put up where the Russians attacked a van, and the civilians got out. I don't know if they survived, because I can't tell. But they were wearing body armor, and essentially Russian telegram was like, look, they're all combatants now, which is kind of the definition of gaslighting, because they're wearing body armor because you're attacking them.
Yes. That is a very common trope on Russian Telegram. They use it as a justification for their strikes on volunteers. They also claim, the Russians like to claim, that volunteers aren't going to people's houses to deliver things. They aren't going to people's houses to move the elderly throughout the city. No, the Russians like to say that they're marauders that are going and stealing everybody's things. All the people that leave the city, the volunteers go in and steal everything. It's complete BS, but it's what the Russians use to sell the videos, the smut films, to their audiences.
Yeah. And that's what their telegram bragging is about. It's like they're not afraid of admitting a war crime. They're really caught up in their own propaganda, it seems. So.
Yes, and some of it, I would even say, it's not even their own propaganda. Some of it's bloodthirst. Some of them, like, I speak Russian, and so I follow all of their channels, and I hide in their chat groups as a non-Russian pretending to be a Russian, just to see what do they think. And it's completely and utterly horrific to know that some of them are like, absolutely, why would we leave anyone alive? Get them all, clear them all out. Some of them have even suggested exhuming all of the graves of Ukrainians in the city after they capture Kherson, which will never happen, likely. But it's to that extent. They want a complete cleansing, some of them.
And it is a scary social science that drives a human to become that way, because it can happen. Russia has a long history that got them to this place, but it can happen to any people, and we need to be on guard against it, because it can happen here as well. But I think that will wrap up our time. If you've seen some of the videos that I've posted on Facebook, or I've even shared some of Brendan's stuff recently, and you said to yourself, "Oh, how horrible!" But how can I help? This is the way you can help, through organizations like Kherson Help. Even if it's helping just one person at a time, this really makes a difference. And call your congressman and talk to them about no-fly zones. There's a lot of other stuff that you could be calling your congressman about. I realize it's a very stressful time, but one of the things that can be done for a lot less money than we're spending on other conflicts right now. And I'll have an AWACS person on within a week or two here to talk, who flew no-fly zones in the 90s over Operation Northern Watch and Southern Watch, to talk about just what the cost of it would be. But it's a lot less than we've been spending as a society on other things. And this is one of those things you can see the results of what happens if there is no help versus what happens if there is. And that's why Brendan and I are doing this work. And Brendan, where else can we find you? Your Substack is pretty much your primary stomping ground.
Yeah, for my Kherson Weekly, my Kherson coverage, that's all on Substack. Kherson Weekly on Substack. Okay. I also am pretty well. I used to be more active on X, but then I kind of got shadow banned, more or less, like back in September. So I struggle to get more than 100 views on any of my posts. So I kind of stopped posting there. But people can follow me on X. I also have a Blue Sky as well, and that's Kelley 7622 on those places. And then I also have an Instagram where I'm regularly active. It's nothing that you won't get anything more than what I do on my Substack. My Substack's my primary. Okay. But also I write daily for Tochny.com. I'm a research associate for Tochny, where I do Tochny. Yes. So the Ukraine Daily Update map, I take all of those data points, I put them into a daily report, and then we publish that daily report on Tochny. Tochny and Ukraine Daily Update map, we're kind of glued together. We have a lot of overlap. We're not the same organization, but like at least 50% of us are in both organizations. So Tochny is the research arm, our research NGO, whereas Ukraine Daily Update map is our sort of day-to-day frontline update kind of thing.
Okay. Tochny.com. How do you spell that?
It's a TOCHNYI.info.
Okay. All right. I will put up a link to that in the edit to this and in the description below on YouTube and in Substack. All the places that you can find Brendan. Once again, he's constantly at work on this. So we thank you so much for being here and taking some time out of that very important work to talk to us. And
no, much appreciated that you reached out to me. I'm really thankful that you gave me a chance to talk to you about what I've been seeing on the Kherson front and just about the humanitarian situation and civilian harm more broadly.
All right. And I always end with saying glory to those who support and defend the Constitution of the United States and Slava Ukraini.
Heroyam Slava.
Heroyam Slava. Right. All right. And then